Breaking news coming out today, March 30th, 2026. As we are hearing, take a look. Trump threatens to obliterate Iran's energy and water infrastructure. This coming out today. I'm going to be sharing with you the latest video footage on this. Live updates. Carolyn Levitt briefs reporters. As Trump intensifies the threats against Iran, we're hearing that new threats have been issued out today, and we're hearing he is literally saying obliterate Iran. Iran warns the U.S. against a ground invasion as Pakistan holds diplomatic talks. Now, Iran warns that U.S. troops will be set on fire if Americans launch a ground operation. I shared this with you yesterday. You can see the date on it, March 29th, as they said, if the troops enter in, they will be set on fire. They said that we will unleash hell on them. And they said, we dare you. We're creating a 1 million-man army to be ready for U.S. troops as they enter into Iran. Now, Trump's 15-point plan he presented for a potential ceasefire and why Iran rejected it. And they came out with a 5-point plan in response, to which the United States said all of these are non-starters. The U.S. is now saying you must respond to all of our requests or we will obliterate you. Now, how this rebel group complicated the Iranian war for the United States, we're talking about the Yemen Houthis, which have now entered into the conflict, as well as things are just expanding and accelerating with the conflict. Unfortunately, it does not appear that it is slowing down. Trump claims Iran cleared 20 ships, though, as a sign of respect. Now, Pakistan says the vessels are theirs, but we're hearing that Trump is saying that this was a gesture of good faith that was done. And we are getting the updates coming in today, Monday, March 30th, 2026. So we're hearing that things are escalating significantly with this war. We're going to be seeing here, Trump is saying we're going to obliterate your facilities, your energy facilities and sites. Absolutely obliterate Iran. Iran is saying they are ready and that they are waiting for U.S. troops to enter in. The United States considering putting troops on the ground, infiltrating, seizing that enriched uranium. Looks like things are escalating. We're going to be seeing, and we're hearing that ground invasion could last several weeks, potentially even months. Some sources from the Pentagon are saying the next 2, maybe 3 months, this war could be going on if we enter into a ground invasion. It looks like we might be going that route. Let me know in the comments. Do you think we're going to have troops, boots on the ground here soon? If you think so, yes. If you think no, put no, drop it in the comments. And while you're doing that, if you appreciate the live stream updates, take a quick second, hit the thumbs up like button for me. It helps out the channel a ton. Subscribe if this is your first time here. It is totally free. I will keep you up to speed on everything so that way you know exactly what is going on. And as you guys know here on the channel, I cite the sources, put it on the screen, read right from it so that way you can know and rest assured this is the latest information. You can click the hyperlinks down below, see all the articles I'm referencing that have been coming out in the last 24 hours. But with that being said, let's take a look at some video footage to get you caught up on the latest.
This is what you need to know now. More U.S. troops heading to the Middle East. First, the big story. The war with Iran now in its 2nd month, and the U.S. military presence in the Middle East is growing. More than 50,000 American troops are in the region, and more are on the way, including 3,500 sailors and Marines from the 31st Marine Expeditionary Unit, equipped with transport and strike fighter aircraft and amphibious assault capabilities, and another 1,500 soldiers from the Army's elite 82nd Airborne. Those troops are trained to parachute behind enemy lines. Iran publicly defiant, warning should the U.S. launch ground troops, Iran would set fire to them and punish their regional partners forever. U.S. and Israel hit Tehran again this weekend. Buildings reduced to rubble. A university also damaged. Iran is now threatening to target American universities with campuses in the region. But President Trump is still insisting a deal with Iran is in the works.
I do see a deal in Iran, yeah.
Mr. President,
could be soon. They're agreeing with us on the plan. They gave us most of the points. Why wouldn't they?
Matt Rivers is in Doha with the latest on peace talks.
Well, Maggie, the foreign ministers for Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and Pakistan all met in Islamabad to try and lay out a roadmap for peace, but not present the U.S., Iran, and Israel. Still, the Pakistani foreign minister says he thinks the U.S. and Iran will meet, quote, in the coming days as thousands of U.S. troops are still headed this way. This as a new entrant into the war emerges, the Houthis in Yemen, firing a missile toward Israel over the weekend, a reminder that the country could cause major havoc should they try and close the Strait of Bab el-Mandeb in the Red Sea. 12% of the world's seaborne oil passes through there, and with the Strait of Hormuz effectively already closed, any disruption in the Red Sea would be catastrophic for global oil supplies.
And this as Israel continues to hit Hezbollah targets in Lebanon. Rick Clennett is in Jerusalem.
Maggie, Israel expanding its operations into southern Lebanon even further. That was the announcement by Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who cited continued rocket fire from Iran-backed Hezbollah. They're trying to create a buffer zone there. Meanwhile, 5 soldiers killed, including an Israeli American, 4 Israeli civilians killed, while the Lebanese death toll mounts. 1,238 killed, more than 1 million displaced, as the UN Refugee Agency warns it's facing a humanitarian catastrophe.
In the U.S., oil prices have started climbing again. Crude is now trading at $116 a barrel in Asia today, near its highest level since the start of the war. According to Gas Buddy, the national average for a gallon of regular gas is now $3.95. Analysts expect it to increase in the coming days. TSA officer.
There you have it, you guys. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Now, we heard that world leaders, you heard that 4 different leaders from different nations came together yesterday. I shared this with you when it came out to try to see if there was some way to broker some sort of ceasefire agreement or deal between the United States and Iran. They're trying to create peace in the Middle East, trying to stop the conflict and have there just be peace. We're world leaders coming together, trying to make sure that we can get some sort of deal to stop the conflict. As we're hearing, there are repercussions that are going to be rippling throughout the economy. It's going to be hitting oil prices. We're seeing stock markets drop. A lot of things are unfolding. Now, if you also want to take advantage of some of the things that you foresee coming here, I've got public.com linked down below. A lot of people have been asking me about financial trades. Check it out. Totally free. You can get an account started totally free. It takes about 5 minutes. Check them out. Wanted to shout them out as well. Linked down below if you are interested. As little as $1, $5, you can start trading. Now, in addition to that, let's take a look at some more updates coming out as Trump has threatened to obliterate Iranian sites today. Let's go ahead and take a look at the footage.
Now to Operation Epic Fury. Moments ago, President Trump giving an update on negotiations with Iran, threatening destruction if a deal is not made.
Chief Foreign Correspondent Trey Yingst is live in Tel Aviv with the very latest. Trey, good morning.
Yeah, hey guys, good morning. Operation Epic Fury has now entered week 5, and the United States continues to hammer the Iranian regime. Moments ago, President Trump took to Truth Social to give an update about the situation. He said, quote, "The United States of America is in serious discussions with a new and more reasonable regime to end our military operations in Iran. Great progress has been made, but if for any reason a deal is not shortly reached, which it probably will be, and if the Hormuz Strait is not immediately open for business, we will conclude our lovely stay in Iran by blowing up and completely obliterating all of their electric generating plants, oil wells, and Karg Island, and possibly all desalination plants, which we have purposely not yet touched." Now, the president's comments come after a series of U.S. and Israeli strikes over the weekend that targeted Iran's steel manufacturing sites and nuclear development facilities. Reports indicate the president is considering a limited ground operation inside of Iran, following the arrival of the USS Tripoli, manned with 3,500 troops, including 2,500 Marines, to the CENTCOM area of operation. The president was asked about the status of military plans yesterday, saying this.
We've had very good negotiations today with Iran, getting a lot of the things that they should have given us a long time ago. We'll see how it works out, but they're very good. Moving along very nicely.
Are you considering still putting boots on the ground, and would you do that without going to Congress?
I just have lots of alternatives. We have tremendous numbers of ships over there. We don't need them all because of, the power. We're ahead of schedule with Iran.
As the war grinds on, Iran is continuing its ballistic missile attacks against Israel, focusing attacks on southern Israel in recent days. A chemical plant outside the city of Beersheba was hit with a missile fragment yesterday, causing toxic black smoke to spew from the facility. The area around the plant was evacuated. With these strikes ongoing, a spokesperson for Iran's IRGC talked over the weekend about the war and President Trump.
Trump threatens an issue one morning and retreats that same evening. He talks about negotiations for a while and decides to continue the war hours later.
We also have new video this morning from the northern Israeli city of Haifa, where part of an Iranian missile slammed into an oil refinery. You can see the fire there as the Iranians are going after more energy targets across the region. And when the IRGC is threatening President Trump, they don't realize the president wants them to be confused about the military operations. There is a large U.S. force buildup across the region and many options on the table for President Trump as this war moves forward. Guys?
So, Trey, how important is it to get that internet up, somehow be able to get the Iranian people to be able to communicate with each other? Do you think we're making any progress in that area?
Yeah, Brian, at this point, no. And it's a major concern for Israeli officials. They are sounding the alarm about the internet blackout across Iran that has now reached more than 700 hours. Iranian civilians not able to organize and speak with each other inside of the country. And also the extent of the damage from these U.S. and Israeli strikes isn't completely known due to the internet blackout. Earlier today, I spoke with a senior Israeli intelligence official who said in part, quote, "This is a blackout on truth. The regime is hiding reality from its own people. They don't want the Iranian people to see how badly they're getting hit." This official went on to say cutting the internet stops people from communicating, from sharing what's really happening, and from organizing. There are major questions about how the Iranian regime is also cracking down on internet access, and we are told that they are jamming the Starlink terminals inside of the country that Iranians previously used to communicate with the outside world.
You know,
Guys?
Trey, you talked about the need for the internet in order to have some sort of organic organization for what's going to happen if and when the regime is toppled. But over the weekend, we saw that Israel bombed 2 universities in Tehran. And concerns me on 2 levels, and I'd like to get your thoughts on it. One, if they bomb those, now they've said, okay, you bombed these universities, now American and Israeli universities are now possible targets. So that's a concern. But also, if you bomb universities, you might anger the very people that you want to have organized, which is primarily young people who want to overthrow this government. Is that something that's being discussed in addition to the problem with the internet?
It's an incredibly delicate situation on the ground inside of Iran. And the president, in his post to Truth Social just last hour, made very clear there are a variety of targets that the United States has decided not to hit, giving these negotiations a chance to succeed. But the president's also been very clear if the Iranians are not willing to make a good faith agreement and come to the table with serious concessions about their ballistic missile program, their nuclear program, and support of regional proxies that threaten U.S. forces, that these other targets are going to be struck. And so the president maintains a variety of options when it comes to the targets inside of Iran. And again, the reality is that the Iranian regime is getting hit so hard that they're afraid for the world to see the aftermath of these U.S. and Israeli strikes. And that's part of the reason we are told by officials here in Israel that they are cracking down on internet access. And that's why Israeli officials believe it's so important to get the internet up in Iran so that the world can see the aftermath of these U.S. and Israeli strikes.
Real quick, Trey, how are the people seeing the propaganda videos with inside of? Is that through the internet? Like, what system are they using for the people in Iran to see those videos?
So there is still state media that is operating inside of Iran, but it certainly can't be trusted. And that, again, is why it is so important to have this internet access so that people can consume objective information about what's happening. Remember, there's quiet support for what President Trump ordered with Operation Epic Fury. Earlier this year, more than 30,000 Iranian civilians were slaughtered by their own regime. They took to their streets of their country protesting peacefully against the government, and they were met with live ammunition. And so that is certainly a concern for these people in Iran who previously were demonstrating in the streets of their country, but their access to information is very limited. And so we know the Israelis have used their intelligence apparatus to try to get information to the Iranian people. But the bottom line here is they don't even understand the extent of what is happening in their own country. And certainly the world isn't able to get a firm grasp on the aftermath of these U.S. and Israeli strikes. But moving forward, we're looking at a variety of things here. One has to do with the internet access in Iran. The second has to do with the pressure that the United States is continuously applying to the Iranian regime with these daily and often hourly strikes. And third, this question about if the Iranians are willing to negotiate in good faith. The president has indicated there are individuals within the regime who are willing to talk at this point, given the fact that the United States and Israel have taken out dozens of senior Iranian officials. But the question is if they are willing to make a good faith agreement. And once again, the president being very clear, he is giving the Iranians an olive branch. He's giving them an off-ramp in this conflict. And he was very clear in that post on Truth Social, if they do not take this diplomatic option, they will face serious consequences.
I hope they understand that. Thanks so much, Trey. Appreciate it.
We
Great
know when the
reporting, Trey.
negotiation is going well because they live. When they don't live, then we know the negotiation isn't going so well. So we'll be following to see.
There you have it, you guys, and we're going to be seeing what unfolds here. Let me know your thoughts. Do you think that we are going to see them get hit more war, or do you think we're going to have peace? Let me know. But we're hearing that former 4-star General Jack Keane says that he thinks that they're not going to surrender. He thinks that they are going to push for more war, that this is the only path forward. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and let's take a look at this video footage coming out today so you can hear from 4-star General Jack Keane and his prediction saying we're going to have a lot more war coming here.
President Trump says the U.S. is in, quote, serious discussions with a new and more reasonable regime to end our military operations in Iran. He's also threatening to strike all of Iran's electric plants if a deal is not made. Retired 4-star General Jack Keane joins me now. This is how the president negotiates, isn't it? He says what he wants, and then he says, I've got all this pressure to make sure I get what I want. Do you think a deal is close?
Well, I think what he's doing, obviously, is leverage. He's really good at leverage.
Yeah, right.
And that's what he's applying here. But in a sense, the whole operation we're conducting is leverage in itself. I suspect that we're not going to make a deal, given the Iranians and who they really are. To make a deal, they would have to surrender all of their capabilities to us. Virtually everything we're physically going to take away from them. And I don't think that's in the cards for them. I actually prefer the military operation anyway.
So the military operation would be go in to get the uranium that they've got, the enriched uranium, go in and get it and take it out, and or occupy Karg Island and mess up their oil and energy operations. That would what a military operation would be?
Yeah. The military operation is take down their whole ballistic missile inventory as much as we can possibly take down.
That's from the air.
And we're well into that. Second, their drone capability, their manufacturing and industrial base, which we worked on very heavily this weekend. In other words, that's future capability. Yes, to take out what remains of their nuclear program. If we can destroy it from the air, fine. If we don't, we may have to conduct a ground operation to temporarily on the ground to accomplish that mission. And then the other mission is to open up the Straits of Hormuz and keep it open. Those are the things we intend to do, and I think we can accomplish all of that. The advantage the military operation gives you over diplomacy is as soon as we cut a deal with the Iranians, assume they surrendered everything I just talked about, what are they going to want, first of all? Sanction relief. Right. Frozen assets relief. Then we infuse billions of dollars into this regime and we recover the regime. And they go on for years to come. And at some point, what are they going to do? They're going to go right back to what they did after the 12-day war, which is recommit ballistic missile development, nuclear development, started to pass money to the proxies through different networks, different banks this time, through Istanbul. They didn't change at all. That's what prompted Netanyahu and Trump. They looked at it and they said, oh my God, they're not changing at all. What one bit have they been set back during that 12-day war and Midnight Hammer, the operation that degraded their nuclear capability severely? They went right back to the start point in their goals. And that's what infusing capital into the regime as a result of a deal would likely do with them.
But we need to get this thing done fairly soon. Because if it's not, the price of oil just keeps on rising, putting pressure all the way around the world on everybody.
Well, let's just think about it. I mean, we're 31 days into this. I mean, because we measure it in minutes on television,
yeah, true.
24/7,
true.
It seems like a long time.
Yeah.
And let's assume we kick it out for another 30 days. That would be 60 days involved in an operation. I think that's reasonable to get a military operation on this scale and what we're attempting to achieve done, that would be quite remarkable. And yes, is there going to be an economic impact of that? It certainly is the case. But the situation is considerably more grave if we let this regime go forward. They long-range ballistic missiles beyond the ranges they currently have, nuclear weapons, which they truly want. That is intolerable. And we got to recognize the reality of that. When you're trying to prevent something from happening, it's a tougher sell than dealing with something that already has happened.
There you have it, you guys. Now, in addition to that, I also saw that they were saying that Iran coordinated with Venezuela, that the reach of those ICBMs you heard him mention, they could have hit the United States if they had those ICBM capabilities in Venezuela that were sent from Iran to there. So they were saying that the United States was potentially susceptible, and they're glad that Donald Trump has overthrown the Maduro regime, and now he's addressing Iran, because if not, we're hearing that Donald Trump was saying that Iran was within 30 days of getting a nuclear weapon and having ICBM capabilities that we were not even aware that they had. And you can see here on display that what unfolded was they were able to reach all the way out to Diego Garcia, which they said was 2,500 miles. So right now, Europe is concerned about the reach. But in addition to that, they're saying Venezuela potentially having those ICBMs could have reached the United States as well. Let me know. Are you concerned about potential attacks on U.S. soil? We heard those warnings coming out from the Department of Defense. Back in January, they said that if the United States entered a war, that the U.S. homeland was susceptible to attack, and that it needed to be the main priority above all else, protecting the U.S. homeland in North America. Now, we're hearing that, as we saw in those videos, that right now Iran is actually blacking out information and the internet from going out, so that way its people are unaware of what's taking place. Let's take a look at some more updates so you can see the latest.
All right, we're going to move now to Operation Epic Fury.
Pakistan says it will host talks between the United States and Iran as thousands of U.S. troops arrive in the Middle East.
Chief Foreign Correspondent Trey Yinks is live in Tel Aviv with the very latest. Trey, good morning.
Hey guys, good morning. Operation Epic Fury has now entered week 5, and the United States is continuing to hammer the Iranian regime. President Trump taking to Truth Social overnight, saying, quote, "Big day in Iran. Many long sought after targets have been taken out and destroyed by our great military, the finest and most lethal in the world. God bless you all." The president's comments come after a series of U.S. and Israeli strikes over the weekend that targeted Iran's steel manufacturing sites and nuclear development facilities. Reports indicate the president is considering a limited ground operation inside of Iran following the arrival of the USS Tripoli, manned with 3,500 troops, including 2,500 Marines, to the CENTCOM area of operation. The president was asked about the status of military plans yesterday, saying this.
We've had very good negotiations today with Iran, getting a lot of the things that they should have given us a long time ago. We'll see how it works out, but they're very good. Moving along very nicely.
Are you considering still putting boots on the ground, and would you do that without going to Congress?
I just have lots of alternatives. We have tremendous numbers of ships over there. We don't need them all because of, the power. We're ahead of schedule with Iran.
As the war grinds on, Iran is continuing its ballistic missile attacks against Israel, focusing attacks on southern Israel in recent days. A chemical plant outside of Beersheba was hit with a missile fragment yesterday, causing toxic black smoke to spew from the facility. The area around the plant was evacuated. With these strikes ongoing, a spokesperson for Iran's IRGC talked over the weekend about the war and President Trump.
Trump threatens an issue one morning and retreats that same evening. He talks about negotiations for a while and decides to continue the war hours later.
As this is all taking place, we know that the Israelis are continuing their airstrikes against the Iranian regime, but you hear from IRGC officials they don't realize that President Trump wants them to be confused about the military plans as this war continues. Guys?
So, Trey, the internet's been shut down for months now, and not allowing the Iranians to be able to communicate virtually at all. Any change to that?
No, and Israeli officials are sounding the alarm about the internet blackout across Iran that has now reached more than 700 hours. They say it's affecting the world's ability to understand the extent and impact of U.S. and Israeli strikes, and it's also hurting Iranian civilians and their ability to organize internally. I spoke with a senior Israeli intelligence official today about this issue, who said in part, quote, "This is a blackout on truth. The regime is hiding reality from its own people. They don't want the Iranian people to see how badly they're getting hit." The official goes on to say, cutting the internet stops people from communicating, from sharing what's really happening, and from organizing. This is significant because we understand that Starlink is being jammed inside of Iran, and so people who previously were able to work around this internet blackout are not able to do so. The Iranian regime has also arrested hundreds of people who are using Starlink terminals, but the official ended by saying something that I think is very important. They said, when this blackout is lifted, the full extent of the damage to the regime will become clear. Guys?
Yeah, that'll be great. Thanks so much, Trey.
Thanks, Trey.
We really only get information from our perspective. I mean, you look at all the Arab newspapers, even the Gulf states don't seem to have an accurate understanding about what's going on inside Iran.
Well, they have what they call their intranet within Iran, where they control. They have the internet, but it's only controlled with what Iranians want their people to see. And the question is, are the people getting an accurate view of what's going on in the war today? Meanwhile, the president is debating if he's going to do ground troops or not. He wants all options on the table.
Yeah, he definitely says he wants all options on the table. I think polling shows the American people don't really want boots on the ground, but in order to negotiate, he's got to say, I can do anything I want.
That's right. You can't
to make this happen.
Yeah.
But my guess is, and knowing Pete Hegseth the way we all know Pete Hegseth, when he's been on this couch many times talking about how we don't want forever wars. And I think at some point we just have to trust that this is going to be as limited as possible. And I think the challenge is going to be, because we're working with a partner, making sure that partner understands that we're in charge.
It's so great to have a partner that is lethal as opposed to one that's so limited like a European partner. The UK has no ships. France has no army.
Embarrassing.
You have a lethal military and a motivated military with the IDF. There's two things that have to happen. The strait's got to open and we got to get the uranium. The president knows both those things. So General McKenzie was right on the money yesterday saying you don't have to take Cargo Island. You block Cargo Island. So you stop 90% of their revenue from coming through. That'll get their attention. And can we get in with heavy equipment and get the 460 pounds of uranium out? That's something the president's looking at. I think we should keep our eye on that.
I'm Steve Deuce. There you have it, you guys. Now we're going to keep our eye on that, because right now Donald Trump is saying there's potential for a ground invasion, and we might go in and get that enriched uranium. Let me know in the comments if you think that's what we need to do. Now, he is also saying that if there is not a deal reached, that we might just obliterate all of their energy and water infrastructure. Let's go ahead and take a look at this article. You can see it came out 6 hours ago from Axios. President Donald Trump threatened on Monday today that if a deal with Iran is not shortly reached, and if the Hormuz Strait isn't opened immediately, the U.S. will completely obliterate Iran's power, energy, and water infrastructure. Donald Trump making these threats against their infrastructure systems, and we've actually heard them threaten the U.S. systems in the Middle East as well, and also the threat of sleeper cells potentially doing attacks on these systems from Iran and China sources at the same time. Now, here's why it matters. Destroying those facilities would not only have devastating implications for Iranian civilians, it could also deepen the war-driven global energy crisis. The threat comes a week before Trump's latest deadline for Iran expires, and with the regime showing few signs of bending. While indirect negotiations between the United States and Iran have been taking place through international mediators, there are no signs at the moment of any significant progress. Now, what he is saying, Trump wrote on Truth Social that the U.S. is in serious discussions with a new and more reasonable regime in Iran on ending the war, and claimed great progress has been made. But if for any reason a deal is not shortly reached, which it probably will be, and if the Hormuz Strait is not immediately open for business, we will conclude our lovely stay in Iran by blowing up and completely obliterating all of their electrical generating plants, their oil wells, and Cargo Island, and possibly all desalinization plants. which we have purposefully not yet touched, Trump wrote. So some major threats coming out today of striking all of those. He claimed that would be in retribution for Iran's killing of U.S. soldiers and others over the last 47 years. Now, state of play. As of Sunday night, last night, Iran hasn't given the mediators an official response to the U.S.'s 15-point proposal for ending the war, though state media reported Iran had rejected Trump's terms. Now, after Trump extended his original deadline to destroy Iran's power plants, the Pakistani government brokered an understanding with Tehran to allow 20 commercial ships to pass through the Strait of Hormuz in the next few days. The Iranians also haven't given a final answer to the U.S.'s proposal to hold a high-level meeting in the next few days. White House envoy Steve Witkoff said on Friday that he believes such a meeting could take place this week, and I will keep you guys up to date on that. If we see a meeting taking place, I'll be sure to let you know, but we're hearing that today. You can see Levitt's briefs reporters as Trump is intensifying the threats against Iran. And Iran is warning the United States against a ground invasion. As Pakistan holds diplomatic talks, they are threatening our U.S. troops, saying that if your troops go on the ground, we're ready to unleash hell. Yet at the same time, we're hearing Pakistan is saying that they are claiming that they are brokering negotiations. Let's go ahead and take a look at some video footage giving us some updates on this as well.
Pakistan says preparing to host talks between the U.S. and Iran. As President Trump says, the terror regime does not have another option, as the Pentagon is reportedly preparing to put troops perhaps on the ground in a few weeks. Retired Navy captain, former Pentagon official Brent Sadler joins us now. Hey, Brent, first off, what do you think happens with those talks? We're not going to talk directly. There's going to be intermediary. Turkey and Pakistan and Egypt are going to be there represented.
Yeah, good morning, Brian. I don't have high confidence that we're going to get anything meaningful, certainly out of the first round or several rounds of these Pakistan-sponsored or hosted peace negotiations. But it does provide some insight as to what the Iranians are willing to give and what the Iranians, I guess, sentiments are. Maybe some insight also on how their government's fracturing. But there's, quite frankly, the United States is in a very strong position. There's nothing that should be given in order to get them to agree to end the hostilities.
Evidently, their president, Presidian, is fighting with the head of the IRGC on next steps. It looks like the ones that are left don't agree on how to go forward. We know there's a huge disconnect between what they're saying about the Gulf states and what they're doing to the Gulf states, and that's hitting them pretty consistently.
No, and this is the type of action that we should be seeing and want to see and encourage. And as the government there starts to splinter and perhaps a form of it that we could live with, that's the one we should be talking with.
So what do you think happens with the Marines, 5,000 that get there, and the thousands from the 82nd? What do you think they should be doing?
Yeah, so there's three waves of them. The first group of Marines are already there, about 2,200 of them. I think the Marines are suited for doing forced insertions or shore raids. I think this is what would be a good use to go after Iranian sites where they mass their small boats and their drones to attack shipping. Not to stay, to go in and get back out, put Marines on some of the ships. There's 5 U.S. flagged ships with U.S. citizens on board crewing them that are stuck in the Persian Gulf. So having a convoy and having those Marines on board visibly shows that the safe passage through the straits is possible. Confidence goes up. As far as the 82nd, the Army, that's, I think, a backstop to places like Kuwait, Bahrain, where we have U.S. forces already based to provide more security and more defenses. But this is not an invasion that's being massed. That would be a different scale in a massively different way than what you're seeing right now.
I just thought, if you want to see the disorganization, I understand that 3 Chinese-linked vessels full of oil were stopped from going into the strait. So if you're stopping the Chinese, who are your number one benefactor, who's making these decisions amongst the Iranians?
It's a good question. I mean, the art and the business of shipping is not exactly transparent. And I think the Iranians, in trying to enforce their diktat, are starting to realize how hard it is to track where the cargo is going, and who owns the ship, who's registered the ship. And usually they're not the same. Each one of those things is different. Right. Perhaps it's confusion, perhaps it's intentional message to Beijing, and I suspect Beijing is certainly supporting these talks in Pakistan.
Real quick, the Houthi rebels rocketed Israel over the weekend. How do we make sure it ends there and they don't try to disrupt the Red Sea?
Well, a couple of things on this part. The Houthis, quite frankly, are a proxy of Iran, and until Iran is no longer, this current terroristic regime, no longer in power, they're always going to be a problem. That cutting off the supply of arms been highly problematic because there's a lot of black marketing and smuggling. Even their enemies will smuggle weapons to the Houthis to make a buck on it. So it's very challenging. It's more than just cutting off the shipment from the sea. But certainly going after the Houthis, if they do attack shipping aggressively in a very grand way, would probably be called for, much like what President Trump did before this current kind of lull in the hostilities from the Houthis.
Yeah, people forget the signal chat is what everyone focused on, but the operation that took out the Houthis and neutralized them is really the story that the Biden administration didn't seem to make a priority. Brent Sadler, thanks so much.
There you have it, you guys. Now, in addition to that, we are hearing that Iran is issuing new threats out, new responses. Just take a look at this here. Warnings against the troops. I let you know that Iran warns U.S. troops will be set on fire if Americans launch a ground operation. And I saw people saying to pray for the troops. I agree with that a ton. If you agree with that as well, to pray for our young troops, drop praying hands in the comments, hit the like button. Let's take a look at this article here. Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf, Iran's parliament speaker, on Sunday yesterday warned the United States against a ground invasion. So again, I shared this with you as soon as it had come out, but just to recap, to let you know where we're at, things are escalating with the tensions. They have threatened to set American troops on fire and set up attacks on U.S. allies, according to the Iranian official media. Now, Ghalibaf said Iranian forces are waiting for the arrival of the American troops on the ground to set them on fire and punish their regional partners forever. Our firing continues. Our missiles are in place. Our determination and faith have increased, he added. And you actually heard in that previous video footage that they said that they're within the range of getting hit by ICBMs when they enter on ground. Now, the Iranian parliament speaker also described the U.S.'s 15-point plan, which Pakistan passed to Iran last week, as their wish list, and said the Trump administration is attempting to do through the plan what it has failed to achieve by force. As long as the Americans seek Iran's surrender, our response is clear. Far be it from us to accept humiliation, Ghalibaf said. Meanwhile, the Revolutionary Guard threatened to target branches of Israeli and American education facilities in the region, calling them legitimate targets if the U.S. does not condemn the bombing of Iranian universities. If the U.S. government wants its universities in the region spared, it should condemn the bombardment of Iranian universities by 12 o'clock Monday, March 30th, in an official statement, the Guard said in a statement, according to the state media. Now, the group urged the evacuation of American and Israeli educational facilities and told students and staff to stay at least 1 kilometer away. The Guard also demanded that the U.S. stop Israel from striking Iranian universities and research centers, which have been attacked in recent days. Israel's military has acknowledged striking Iranian universities it says are connected to weapons development. American colleges, including Georgetown, New York University, and Northwestern, have campuses in Qatar and the United Arab Emirates. The American University of Beirut announced on Sunday that it would operate remotely over the next 2 days. President Fadlo Khoury said in a statement on the university's website that while there is no evidence of direct threats against the university, out of an abundance of caution, they will be transitioning to online. Our highest priority has always been and will always be the safety of our community and the people that we serve, he said, adding, we remain especially committed to teaching, healing, and serving those less fortunate at all times. We at AUB will not be driven from our mission by threats or violence, not now and not ever. This is the first time Iran has threatened to strike Israeli and American universities. Many universities around the region have already moved to teaching online since the U.S. and Israeli attacks on Iran triggered an ongoing war in the Middle East. Now, in a statement posted on X on Sunday, the U.S. Embassy in Baghdad warned that Iran and allied militias may intend to target the American universities in Baghdad. Now, other places as well along with other universities perceived to be associated with the United States. The statement added that Iran and affiliated militias have already carried out widespread attacks on U.S. citizens, targets associated with the United States throughout Iraq, and the Iraqi government has not prevented terrorist attacks against the United States and regional countries from Iraqi territory. And we had heard this warning come out. There was an alert where they said, if you are an American citizen or an Israeli citizen, Iran is saying no matter where you are in the world, you are a potential target. So there is a global threat, an alert warning coming out for U.S. citizens and Israeli citizens, as we're hearing that Iran has essentially rejected the 15-point plan that Donald Trump had provided to try to seek out some form of a ceasefire. Iran is saying that this is their wish list. Now, at the same time, we're hearing that Pakistan and 4 other nations, world leaders coming together, trying to see if they can broker some sort of peace agreement at this time. Now, we're hearing that Pakistan is saying that they have come to an agreement where they are now in the Strait of Hormuz allowing 20 ships to go through. Trump is saying that it was out of respect for the United States. Pakistan is saying that they brokered it. Let's go ahead and take a look at the latest updates coming out today on this.
Meanwhile, to the Middle East, President Trump says Iran is letting oil flow through the Strait of Hormuz once again as thousands of U.S. troops arrive in the region.
Rich Edson is live at the White House with the details. Good morning, Rich.
Good morning, Lawrence, Rachel, and Brian. President Trump says he's having very good negotiations with the Iranians. He says he will probably cut a deal with them, but he says it's possible he does not. The president also says that Iran gave yet another indication that it is serious about an agreement.
They gave us as a tribute, I don't know, I can't define it exactly, but they gave us, I think out of a sign of respect, 20 boats of oil, big boats of oil, going through the Hormuz Strait. And that's taking place starting tomorrow morning. Over the next couple of days, a lot of boats.
Yeah, the president spoke on Air Force One last evening, returning to the White House from Florida. With the U.S. boosting its troop presence in the region, the Speaker of Iran's parliament accused the president of negotiating while secretly planning a ground invasion. One Democrat says the president's claims of talks are nonsense.
Oh, I think he's flat out lying. Last Sunday when he was told, and by the way, we're in exactly the same position today, oil prices now $112 a barrel and, futures in the stock market down 2%. Last Sunday, he realized, oh my God, I've got a financial cataclysm on Monday. So he just made it up that they're in negotiations with the Iranians.
Now, there are more questions from Congress about that troop presence and whether the president plans on using them in a ground invasion. The president says he has options.
Are you considering still putting boots on the ground, and would you do that without going to Congress?
I just have lots of alternatives. We have tremendous numbers of ships over there. We don't need them all because of, the power. We're ahead of schedule with Iran.
Iran has its own list of demands. It wants the United States to lift sanctions, pay reparations, and also acknowledge that Iran has sovereignty over the Strait of Hormuz. Back to you guys.
All right, we'll see what's going to happen. The bottom line is when this ends, Iran cannot be in control of that strait. They can't be decided in a month or two, we're going to shut it down again. This will be an ongoing display of power. So, guys.
There you have it, you guys. Let me know your thoughts. And you heard that individual on Face the Nation say that he thinks that Trump is lying about the negotiations, that they're not even happening, that he's just doing that because of some of the impacts we're seeing in the economy. Now, let me know your thoughts in the comments. Do you agree? Do you trust Donald Trump? If so, put Trump. Or do you trust that individual and what Iran is saying? Iran is saying there are no negotiations taking place, that Trump is lying. If you trust Iran, put Iran. But Trump is saying that they're taking place and that Iran is lying, saying they're not, and that Iran is actually behind the scenes begging for a deal. But then publicly they're showing bravado, that they are not going to budge. But Trump is saying that we are very close. Who do you trust? Who do you think is telling the truth here? Drop it in the comments. Trump or Iran? Let me know your thoughts. But let's take a look at some more updates coming out as we're hearing that Trump warns about the ground invasion and obliterating Iran, despite his also simultaneously diplomatic attempts taking place. Let's go ahead and take a look at this clip.
Let's jump now to retired U.S. Navy Vice Admiral Bob Murrett. He is the Deputy Director of the Syracuse University Institute for Security Policy and Law. Good morning. I want to know what you make of the threat from President Trump that a ground invasion could in fact take place Diplomatic talks apparently are emerging, although we haven't seen the fruits of that just yet. What would an Iran ground invasion look like by U.S. forces, and the risks?
Yeah, Errol, a great question. I think the first point I would make is that the objectives would probably be limited. I mean, the kind of ground forces that we're looking at now that are flowing into the region, first one, then a second Marine amphibious unit, then the alert unit from the 82nd Airborne Division, would be for not large-scale ground objectives, similar to what we saw, for example, in the invasion of Iraq in 2003. It would be more selective. I know there's a lot of speculation about Carg Island, for example, but this is not the kind of force package you would need for a major invasion to seize and secure and maintain large parts of territory.
Just discussing with Liz, the military can achieve short-term objectives, but there's always a political long-term objective. So does the U.S. really have the resources in the first place for a ground invasion to hold in a place like Iran?
Yeah, great question, Errol. As I was saying, but just for limited objectives. I mean, they might want to seize just some small bit of territory. We could speculate on where that might be around the Straits of Hormuz, or, as we said earlier, Carg Island, which is tougher just from the standpoint it's in the northern Gulf. The geography there makes it certainly more complicated. So those are, and there's also even a smaller scale operation like that. Some of the very light forces that are being inserted into the region could just seize one small objective. I know there's speculation about some of their nuclear facilities. So the kind of packages you would need for a large-scale invasion to seize and to occupy territory for any long period of time are not in the theater yet. And I haven't seen any speculation that that is something that's in the van. Just a final comment I would make, Errol. These are the kinds of well, 2 points, really. You want to have deterrence, and that's one of the things I think is at work here, to provide as much deterrence as we can and negotiating leverage against Iran. And the second thing is, I mean, the military also always has to provide options, different options for any Secretary of Defense and President, so they have things they can choose from for any operations they might want to consider executing in the near future.
So we're hearing that Trump is not ruling out boots on the ground. We're going to be seeing if that is the direction that we are going to be going here very soon with Operation Epic Fury. Iran is warning against that, saying that if the troops enter in, they're going to light them on fire. And we're also hearing that the Houthi rebels are also entering into this conflict as well. Let's take a look at this. So more people diving in, things are escalating, things are not slowing down. This coming out 4 hours ago, how this rebel group complicates the Iranian war for the United States. The Houthis, a militant rebel group from Yemen, they have joined the Iranian war, massively complicating the road ahead for the United States. Houthis' involvement not only gives Iran another ally in the war, but it could exacerbate the global energy and shipping crisis caused by closing the Strait of Hormuz. So we're hearing that there could be a lot of economic troubles ahead. The Houthi rebels in Yemen launched a missile at Israel on Saturday, which the IDF said it intercepted, Axios Barak Ravid reports. Now, the rebel group's military spokesperson, Yahya Sari, said in a statement that the strikes was done in support of Iran and teased more attacks until this war ends. The Houthis' involvement has already spooked the markets. On Sunday, oil prices climbed above $116 per barrel at the opening. Now, the Houthis control territory along key Red Sea shipping routes, mainly near the Bab al-Mandeb Strait, meaning their involvement could potentially threaten global trading lanes. The Iran war has already disrupted oil exports and shipping lanes due to the closure of the Strait of Hormuz. Any disruption or attacks on the Red Sea would instantly increase the international shipping crisis and put a strain on exports of oil and liquefied natural gas in the region. Now, Iran signaled that it would bottleneck more choke points outside of the Strait of Hormuz, like the Bab al-Mandeb. Shutting down the Bab al-Mandeb Strait is a viable option, and the consequences will be borne by the Americans and the Israeli aggressors. Mohammed Mansour, Deputy Information Minister in the Houthis government, told CNN on Friday. Now, on Friday, the Houthis indicated that they would join the war if the U.S. and Israel used the Red Sea for war operations. The Houthis attacked Israel the following morning. Houthis are already at odds with the United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia too, which broadens the war and creates a new front in Yemen. Now, the Houthis are a longtime adversary of the United States and Israel, which has attacked the Houthis and their military and political leaders. Any attack by the U.S. or Israel against the Houthis could lead to retaliatory strikes. The group could also attack other countries in the Gulf, such as Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates. So here's what to know. The Houthis are one of the members of Iran's-led Axis of Resistance, which includes Hezbollah in Lebanon and Hamas in the Gaza Strip. The group rose to prominence in the 1990s as a religious movement aligned with Zaydism, a branch of Shia Islam followed by about 1/3 of Yemen's population. Now, the Houthis have sought to control Yemen, defend their religious identity, and gain leverage in the Gulf. They've generally opposed the United States and Israel's influence in the Middle East, too. They overthrew the Saudi-backed Yemen government in 2014. U.S. relationship with the Houthis. The United States and the Houthis have had a fraught relationship for the last few decades. President Donald Trump designated the Houthis in Yemen as a terrorist group in 2025. Trump targeted the group with airstrikes in Yemen in 2025 after the Houthis downed a U.S. military drone. The U.S. and the Houthis reportedly agreed to a ceasefire in May of 2025 after those attacks. Now, the Houthis, they aren't just another player in the war. They could supercharge the global shipping and energy crises. So there you have it, you guys. That is the concern right now, is the involvement of the Houthis, who have jumped into the war, into the conflict in the Middle East. And we are hearing that right now, the energy sectors are feeling that pain. So, and they're saying it doesn't look like it's going to be ending anytime soon. Let's take a look at some more updates coming out in the last couple hours.
Iran is issuing a sharp new warning to the United States. Iran's parliament speaker says if U.S. forces launch a ground invasion, Tehran's troops are ready to, quote, set them on fire. The threat comes as thousands of U.S. troops move into the region, and Pakistan's foreign minister says it will soon host talks between the U.S. and Iran. Chief Correspondent Jonathan Hunt is in Tel Aviv with the latest for us. Jonathan.
John, a U.S. ground operation may be on the way, and it could happen very soon. That is doing little, though, to deter Iran from continuing to attack Israel and its Gulf neighbors. A missile slammed into southern Israel near the town of Beersheba today, sending a huge plume of gray smoke over the area. Apparently it was some sort of chemical facility that was hit. Local residents were told to keep their windows shut and their air conditioning off because of the toxic fumes produced as a result of that strike. Meantime, the U.S. continues to hit targets throughout Iran, missile launchers and military manufacturing installations among the most recent targets for U.S. aircraft. As those 2,500 Marines you mentioned arrive aboard the USS Tripoli, they would be probably the spearhead for any sort of U.S. ground operation that President Trump decides to order. But Iranian officials are saying they are ready for whatever the U.S. does next, and they are mocking President Trump's decision-making. Listen here.
At one moment, he speaks of negotiations, and shortly afterward, he decides to manage the war. This unbalanced and deceitful individual has inflicted extensive damage on the people of the United States, Europe, and countries around the world, especially the countries of West Asia.
Israel, meantime, is also focusing on the northern front here, its battle against Hezbollah in Lebanon. Prime Minister Netanyahu said today that he will expand what he calls a security zone into southern Lebanon. He calls it expanding a security zone. Many others call it an invasion once again of Lebanon. John?
Plenty of controversy in the United States about the Iran war. What about in Israel? Is there a consensus there?
I think in this wartime moment in which the Israelis find themselves right now, they back the idea, certainly, of regime change in Iran. They back the idea of crushing Hezbollah in Lebanon, but they don't want this to be open-ended. The Israeli people, John, are absolutely exhausted. They have gone 3 years, of course, 3 years and more since the attacks of October 7th, with, it seems to many of them, unending war. And I think what they would like to know from Prime Minister Netanyahu is when this will end, how it will end. And it will be interesting as we go forward this year. Netanyahu is under a time crunch for the elections. He has to call elections here by the end of October. It will be interesting then to see how the Israeli people react to what he has done over the last 3 years and how he prosecutes these wars in the coming months. John?
All right, Jonathan Hunt reporting live from Tel Aviv. Jonathan, thank you. For more on this, let's bring in retired Navy Captain Bob Wells. So 3,500 Marines moving into the theater there, Captain Wells. How would you imagine they get used? The president has talked about no boots on the ground. Does this suggest that there will be?
Well, thank you again, John, for having me. Certainly the Tripoli and its associated Marine Expeditionary Unit has the forcible entry capability to conduct any particular options. Obviously, the planners at CENTCOM are focused on reopening the Strait of Hormuz, also the IRGC positions throughout the Persian Gulf, even outside the Persian Gulf, in terms of where they physically are. I would say welcome aboard to the Marines. Welcome aboard to the operating forces, the naval forces that are outside the Persian Gulf, the North Arabian Sea. Quite a bit of firepower, Tomahawk strike firepower, naval gunfire support, armed helicopters, persistent surveillance. Just looking at it before we go into any particular option that the president represents, I really think we're in the third quarter of this particular operation for Epic Fury, and I do think the IRGC is going to lose.
The Strait of Hormuz, obviously the choke point there that has prevented so much of the world's energy, fertilizer, food from getting through. Are the Marines going to be involved, do you think, in making sure that that is reopened?
If that's part of their mission set, obviously you have the gate guard. I've been through there dozens and dozens of times listening to the IRGC in Larak Island or off of Keshem. Notice that the American warships are coming through the Strait of Hormuz. It's got about a 2 nautical mile separation in the international waterway. But what the Iranians have done in the last week is put a new toll gate in between Larak and also Keshem. I would say that based on the planning, they would try to take out those particular toll gates so that Iran does not have the power to say yes to what is transiting the Strait of Hormuz, and things go back to its internationally recognized transit areas. They are formidable, though. They are a force to be reckoned with. So I think the Marine Corps, if they chose a forcible entry option, not only looking at the Strait of Hormuz, but also looking at other places outside the Strait of Hormuz, like Jask, which is another export area for Iran for their oil, or even Karg Island.
What about the uranium? We know the Iranians have been enriching it. Even if it's not on board a missile, it is dangerous. An Army Forces, a U.S. Army Special Forces veteran, Jim Hansen, says we have a lot to be concerned about there. Listen.
One of the main things we have to get is the enriched uranium. They either have to give that up or maybe we go get it. It's a hellish concept to think we have to go underground and try to grab that stuff and leave. But that's one of the potential missions for those guys.
Is that, in fact, one of the potential missions for the Marines who are out there on the Iwo Jima?
I think it would be a mission for example, the Special Forces, specifically focusing on that particular mission set, looking at what they achieved with Osama bin Laden, in fact, in Abbottabad, recalling that mission. Also, the 82nd Airborne. The Marines, I think, are focused on the littoral areas of Iran and looking at trying to support a broader strategy of making sure that we protect the Gulf cooperation nations. This is the largest, energy seas in history, and We need to basically free up the Strait and the Persian Gulf in order to set the conditions to actually have a new regime in the Persian Gulf for the free transport of oil, helium, fertilizer, et cetera, that are all being produced on the Arab side.
Karg Island is Iran's largest shipment point for its energy, the energy that comes out of the ground there. Some have speculated that the Marines might go in and essentially seize it, but there's also a large IRGC, Revolutionary Guard force, on the island, is there not?
There is, and I think they're employing a porcupine strategy, and it's dangerous. Obviously, we hit some of the targets on Karg Island from the air, but I think there's a school of thought that would argue that we need to basically be creative, continue to allow the Iranian tankers to be berthed there, maybe not let them get underway. They're very vulnerable to their political economy with their oil exports there. But I do think the focus, the critical focus of efforts got to be the Strait of Hormuz. There's other transit passage areas off of the Emirates and Oman that could be used to get to the international waterway. We need to continue the Fury operation to reduce the risk to the ballistic missiles and also the drone warfare.
Retired Navy Captain Bob Wells. Captain Wells, thank you.
There you have it, you guys. Now let's go ahead and take a look at some more footage that's been coming out here as we're hearing that there is energy panic coming out as the Houthis are going to be entering in. And let me know, what do you think is going to be happening to oil? Is it going to skyrocket even further? Or do you think we're going to get this addressed and things are going to go down? Let me know in the comments, up or down, what's going to be happening with oil. Let's go ahead and take a look here. But they're saying the Houthis are going to have a huge impact on this, as we saw from that article just a little while ago from Axios.
Welcome back. Good Monday morning, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us this morning. I'm Maria Bartiromo, and it is Monday, March 30th. It is 7 a.m. on the button on the East Coast. Oil prices are climbing once again this morning, even though stocks are at the highs of the morning. Dow Industrials up 250 points, but take a look at Brent hovering around $115 a barrel right now, on track for a record monthly surge, with Brent at 115, up 2%, and crude oil at 101.65, up better than 2%. Crude is now up better than 50% this month as markets price in escalating geopolitical tensions with the war in Iran. The national average for gasoline prices also up better than $1 in the last month. $3.99 a gallon for regular gasoline. Joining me now is S&P Global's Vice Chairman Daniel Yergin. Dan, great to have you back. And of course, you were just coming off of your wildly successful conference last week, the Sierra Energy Conference, and you did on stage 39 interviews. Among those interviews was the CEO of Chevron, Mike Wirth. He said that the impact of the Iranian conflict is not being fully priced into the oil market. Can you talk to us about your observations and also what Mike Wirth told you?
Yes, I think what Mike is saying, Mike is looking at the physical realities of oil, not what the price of oil going up and down on futures markets and so forth. And he's looking, like other CEOs, at what are the constraints there, what are going to be the difficulties now and in the future. And when they look at that, they say, there's more risk. And I think as a CEO, his job, as with the other CEOs, is really to be looking at what the physical risks to supply are. And they see that this is an unprecedented situation. There's never been a disruption like that, and it flows through the whole system. And Mike made that point. I think the other CEOs in their own ways also made it, that their physical risk is greater. The constraints are greater when you have a system as disruptive as this is. It's not only the volumes of oil, but it's actually all the other things around the tankers and the movements and the threats that add to the risk.
Well, it's a great point because you're seeing damage to some of their infrastructure within the Middle East. Dan, what else are your observations from your conference last week? We were all watching you on stage talk to so many people, from oil to chemical CEOs as well.
Yeah, I think what came out is that this is not something that's, even if there was peace tomorrow, the next day, this is not something that's going to be unwound quickly, that it could take 2/3 of a year, actually, one of the CEOs said, in order to fully get back to normal if things stop now. And you pointed to the destruction because, of course, the focus has been rightly on the Strait of Hormuz in the way that the Iranians are really trying to turn it into a canal that they control, and that they can extract revenues and decide who goes through and who doesn't go through. But also what's been mounting is the destruction on this vast amount of infrastructure that is so critical to the world economy, that the Iranians have been attacking up and down the Arab side of the Persian Gulf, and repairing that is going to take time. It's oil, it's natural gas, it's petrochemicals. The list goes on. It's things that people don't think about. Helium, which is used in manufacturing semiconductors. And another one is fertilizer. The Gulf is a major source of fertilizer, aluminum. All of those are being hit, and that means disrupting supply chains, sending prices up, and particularly right now, Maria, hitting hard at Asia, because Asia has been so dependent on oil and gas flows from the Persian Gulf. But it's going to radiate around the world, and you see that you pointed to that gasoline, 1 cent less than $4 right now in the United States.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned Asia, because there are also some new rules in place in Asia. I mean, China is putting some restrictions in place as a result of this. What can you tell us on that?
Well, China has been an exporter of oil, refined products, including sending some of those refined products to California. They're now restricting their exports of oil. Other countries are saying, work at home, work only 3 days a week, leave your car at home, take public transportation. And some of the countries are really in a panicky situation. Japan gets over 90% of its oil from the Persian Gulf. It has domestic reserves, which it's strategic reserves beginning to release. But and the disruption of gas supplies is very important to the region.
Of course. Now, global shipping is obviously facing the disruption in the Strait of Hormuz after Saudi Arabia diverted a majority of crude oil shipping through the Red Sea and its Bab el-Mandeb Strait. Yemeni Houthis, however, are stepping up attacks. They have joined the fight over the weekend. This is raising more questions here. What's your take on the Houthis? They said they launched ballistic missiles at Israel and would continue operations until the strikes on Iran and the proxy militant groups such as Hezbollah in Lebanon stop, Dan. But at the same time, the Saudi pipeline that bypasses Hormuz hit 7 million barrel goal last week. So with the Strait of Hormuz effectively shut down, what's your take on the Red Sea and the threat there and that Saudi pipeline?
Well, the Saudis built that pipeline system during the Iran-Iraq war when they saw that there was, a threat to the Strait of Hormuz, and it was a very smart thing to do so that they can move an additional 5 million barrels a day in addition to what they're already moving to the Red Sea, get it in tankers. But what you point out, Maria, that's the Bab el-Mandeb. That's the other strait. And that one is only 18 miles wide at its most narrow. And who controls that? The Houthis, who are the dearest and closest allies of the Iranians and most powerful in the entire world. They closed the Red Sea for about 2 years. A couple of years ago, and they could certainly do that again. They've had a truce with the Saudis, but that could change, and so that adds to the vulnerability and the sense of risk. To think that the world is as dependent as it is on these two very narrow straits, which are basically controlled by Iran or by Iran's most beloved ally.
So we're hearing that things could get much worse for the energy sectors. Now, we're also hearing that things are just significantly escalating right now, and there are warnings about this war just escalating quite a bit here. And I was actually just checking the news headlines, and we're hearing that there could be warnings coming out here of some serious attacks. In fact, we're hearing that somebody from the UN just a little while ago today has resigned because there is some sort of rumor going around surrounding the conflict in the Middle East of the use of a nuclear weapon that's been coming out. So I'm going to do some research on that, get you guys caught up, but stay tuned to the channel. If you're not already subscribed, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button if you appreciate the live stream feeds. As you know, all the articles are going to be linked down in the description, along with additional resources for those of you that are interested. I saw a lot of people saying that they think oil is going to go up. If you'd like to figure out a way to start investing very quickly, very simply, easily from your phone, Public.com is linked down below. You can start a free account, start investing today if you think you know what direction the markets are going to be going. But like I said, I just saw in the news some updates regarding potential rumors going around about nuclear attacks. So I'm going to take a look at that. Stay tuned to the channel. Hit the subscribe button. Likely going to do a live stream here in maybe about 3-4 hours from now. Get you caught up on that as well. But that is the latest, you guys. Thank you so much for joining me. Hit the like button. Like I said, if you haven't done so yet, additional resources down below. Subscribe to stay up to date, and I'll catch you in the next one. Thank you so much for joining me. Take care. God bless. This is Steve.